Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast For the Love of Drama. I am Fiona, and today, continuing the discussion on comedy in acting, I'm going to be talking about the much-loved comedy series Only Fools and Horses. Only Fools and Horses ran from 1981 to 2003. And in that time, there were 7 series and 16 Christmas specials. Del Boy, Derek Trotter, played by David Jason, is very often regarded to be one of the most famous comedy characters in the history of television. The best loved character in the history of British television. So, Derek Del Boy Trotter and his much younger brother Rodney Trotter and their granddad, played by Leonard Pearce. Rodney is played by Nicholas Lyndhurst. They all live in a council flat in Nelson Mandela House, a tower block, which is in South London in Peckham. Del Boy became Rodney's surrogate father after their mum died and also became the family leader. Despite differences in age, personality, and outlook, the two brothers share a bond throughout the whole series. The main cast that feature in the whole series are David Jason, of course, who plays Derek Trotter, Nicholas Lyndhurst, who plays Rodney Trotter, Leonard Pearce plays Grandad, and after that, Buster Merrifield, who plays Uncle Albert. John Challis plays Boycie, who is a rather successful businessman who sort of is a friend / acquaintance of Del Boy's, and Del Boy and his mates take the mickey out of him constantly. And of course there is the beloved Trigger, played by Roger Lloyd Pack, who plays him just brilliantly. He is, if you remember in my previous talk about comedy in acting, I reckon he's the fall guy of the comedy characters. Remember I talked about the protagonist, the antagonist, the straight guy, and the fall guy. I suppose Boycie could be the straight guy. Del would probably be the protagonist. Not sure who the antagonist is, because I should think... Anyway, I should think that Del Boy and Rodney were sort of the protagonist of the show anyway. So, interesting to look at it that way. For the love interests in the show, Gwyneth Strong plays Cassandra, who eventually becomes Rodney's wife, and Tessa Peake Jones plays Raquel Turner, who has a long-term relationship with Del in the end, and they have a son called Damien Derek Trotter. So, just going to concentrate on the two characters of Del Boy and Rodney. Del Boy, happy-go-lucky big brother of Rodney, cheeky character, known for his French phrases, all said in the wrong context. Au revoir usually is said hello, bonjour is usually goodbye, and it's all totally mixed up. And if he gets an idea, it's mon Dieu, mon Dieu, and goodness knows what other French phrases. He has many catchphrases as well. Kushti, You know it makes sense when he's usually at the end of closing some dodgy business deal. And probably the motto he absolutely lives by: he who dares wins. Not always successful, but usually confident and optimistic. And because of this very persona he has, this at ease persona, he gets people on his side very easily. Always has a scheme to get rich quick, but underneath all the bravado, boldness, and blustery behaviour, he has a vulnerable side, which shows itself fairly often in terms of loneliness. There is a scene where he is worried that he might be seriously ill, and he gets the news in hospital that he just needs to look after himself. And it's quite poignant when he realizes that moment on his own, and he gets quite tearful. He plays that vulnerability, and he's not afraid to show, well, actually he does hide his feelings quite well, I think, but in situations he can completely just let go. And David Jason is brilliant anyway. I've always loved him. Now, Rodney Trotter. Here's the much younger brother of Del Boy. Not as confident as his brother by any stretch, but supports Del Boy in all his schemes. He is quite disapproving of Del's morals, though, and his dodgy dealings, but he's usually persuaded anyway, because Del Boy can be quite manipulating and has this way of talking him round, especially if there is financial reward at the end of it. So it's a great storyline, full of many, many different situations and scrapes that the two brothers get themselves into and out of. And of course, a few series into the show, unfortunately, Leonard Pierce died as Grandad, and so Uncle Albert, played by Buster Merrifield, took over and moved in with Del Boy and Rodney. And there's so many funny scenes. I mean, I haven't watched it for ages, but the chandelier scene played, which was actually filmed in a house that I can't remember. It was somewhere here in Dorset, not too far away. And it was with the two brothers and Grandad, and they tried their hand to removals, and they came into this really posh house, and they had to take the chandeliers down. Grandad went upstairs into the room that the chandelier would be hanging underneath and started to undo the bolts. And Rodney and Del Boy and Rodney were on ladders with a blanket underneath the chandelier, waiting for it to be loosened and released, so they could take the strain with the blanket and therefore lift the chandelier down to safety. But unfortunately, that didn't quite go to plan. So you can see, I could still picture it in my head now, Del Boy and Rodney holding the blanket. Del Boy says to Rodney, "Brace yourself, Rodney, take the strain." And all of a sudden, the chandelier over the other side of the room goes crashing down and smashes on the floor. And they look at each other. It's just perfection. Grandad had loosened the bolts on the wrong chandelier. He was in the wrong location. It was blooming hilarious. And at that moment, they just scarpered and ran for it. And there were many, many other moments. Such an incredible series. Again, what I've said about in many previous videos, truly, truly relatable. And that's what people love. You know, they can relate to it and think, oh gosh, I've done things maybe not quite as mad as that, but getting close. And it's okay to make mistakes. Where was I? So I think I've talked for long enough anyway. But if for any reason you've been living on another planet all these years, yeah, the younger generation might not have seen this series, but watch it if you can. It's on various platforms on the television. But have a great weekend, guys, and I will catch up with you all very soon. Bye bye.